Hey guys, Broke-Dad here. Today I'm going to show you how to take your old kitchen cabinets and transform them into something more unique using only gel stain. Stay tuned. The wonderful thing about this project is that you can do it in sections to reduce the workload, but be forewarned that it is a lengthy process due to the drying times between coats. You will also want to give yourself lots of room to work with the cabinet doors. If possible, use a place that is somewhat free of floating dust and relatively dry. I used the basement with large construction paper to set the pieces onto when drying. Start by taking down all the cabinet doors, by removing the screws and any hardware. Keep the screws organized so you don't lose any. A Ziploc bag works perfectly for this. I kept the hinges on and painted around them for this project. Now clean the area that is going to be stained with odorless mineral spirits and a steel pad. Use a liberal amount of mineral spirits and gently scrub the surface of the cabinet as well as the frames still attached to the countertop. This will remove grease, grime, and neutralize prior finishes, making the wood more pliable for the stain application. Even though you are using odorless mineral spirits, you will want to wear a mask and ventilate the area you are working in. Allow the mineral spirits to dry, and don't be worried if it leaves a milky film behind. We will get rid of that later. Take a higher grit sandpaper, above 220, and gently sand down each piece of wood that you are going to stain. Try to move with the grain of the wood, meaning in the direction of the lines in the wood. Do not apply any downward pressure or you risk scuffing the wood. Stay away from electrical sanders unless you really need to remove a lot of paint or finish. I didn't even use a sanding block for this because I wanted to be able to feel how much pressure I was applying. And since we are using gel stain, we don't need to break down the wood too much. Gel stain acts like a paint while leaving a heavy stained look, and this is especially nice when working on a kitchen that you are currently living in. You don't have to cover the entire house to prevent sawdust because you are not really sanding the wood down. Now take a Tac Cloth, which is a sticky disposable cloth you can purchase from any hardware store, and wipe down every surface that was sanded. The Tac Cloth picks up all dust particles and allows the stain to be applied smoothly. Now you are ready to apply the stain. Gently stir the contents of the stain and apply to the cabinets. I used two different techniques for applying the stain. For the front of the cabinets, I wanted to make a big color change, so I applied a heavy coat in long, even strokes and allowed it to dry without wiping off the stain. This is much more like painting, and the result is a deeper and darker color. Try to apply even pressure when smoothing out the stain. Follow the grain of the wood and don't overbrush, meaning if the stain is starting to dry, don't keep trying to brush out any imperfections. You'll only make it worse. Just know that the gel stain seems to even out on its own while drying. So once you lather on a lot of the stain, smooth it out by starting from one end of the piece and gently drag the brush in a straight line all the way over the edge on the other side of the piece. I allowed this first coat a few days to dry. Then I decided to apply a second coat, but this time after putting on the stain I gently wiped it off with a dry cloth. The second coat made the color just a little bit darker and matched exactly what we wanted. Here's an example of the different techniques. The middle one isn't stained. The one on the left is the single wiped off coat, and the one on the right is the one with the painted two coats. You will use the same technique on the framing for the cabinets, the only difference being that you'll want to set down painter's tape on the areas that you don't want stain on, like the walls. Just remember to apply long, even strokes from end to end, and try not to overbrush. I was probably being overcautious, but I allowed the stain a week to completely dry. This allowed the scent of the stain to dissipate before sealing it. This is an example of what happens when you don't properly clean the piece before applying stain. The dirt falls off and the stain goes with it. To fix something like this, simply sand the piece down, wipe away the dust with a Tac Cloth, and apply another light coat of stain. Once all the stain is dry, you will need to apply a finish. Because this is a kitchen and the cabinets take abuse from impacts, food stains, and moisture, I used WinMax Wipe-On Poly. You will need a lint-free cloth, rubber gloves, and a respirator for this. Make sure the surfaces are dust-free with a Tac Cloth as to prevent blemishes in your finish. Pour a good amount of poly onto the cloth and apply the poly in long, even pressured strokes from one end of the piece to the next. Try to apply the poly with the grain of the wood and don't overbrush it. You will be applying several coats over time and the sheen will come. If you notice that the polyurethane is bumpy after it has dried, simply take a piece of sandpaper and lightly smooth it out. Again, wipe away the dust with a Tac Cloth and apply another coat. For this project, I applied 3 coats on the framing of the cabinets and 5 coats on the drawer fronts and cabinet fronts. I applied 2 coats to the back of the cabinet doors. This stain has been on the cabinets for over a year now, and it has held up very well despite the attempts of several toddlers. The only issue we've had so far is that the stain was chipping off from the top of the silverware drawer. The daily impact from the metal utensils was just too much. I simply touched up the chip spots with more stain and applied several more coats of polyurethane, and this seemed to have resolved the issue. This is a relatively inexpensive way to take drab, basic cabinets and turn them into something unique. The upgrade will bring new life to the kitchen or bathroom for under $100. I hope this video was helpful, and I want to thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe and like our videos.